Jeff here, and today we're going to enter into C-Stu-Do's 36,000 subscriber, one of the giveaways that he's running. He's actually running 3 different ones because he's just amazing like that. And what he's asked for us to do is to share our journey of learning, teach something. Of course, I've got numerous options, but I am going to go for the lock sport option today because it's what I've been working on lately. So, most of you know what it means when you see a lock with this little slot in it there. This is what we call a smart key. What it means is that if we have a key that works and we press that in, we can switch it to another key, and now the original key no longer works. So this right here, I'm going to put this back on the one I've been using just so I don't forget. This is what I have been working on learning lately. Now, there's a lot of tricks and facts to know about these. Biggest one being the fact that there is more than one generation. Thankfully, what I have here is either first or second generation, because third generation requires an additional tool. Now, the thing to notice about these is that even though it seems like you're seeing pins down in there and you're using a regular pin tumbler key, this is not a regular pin tumbler lock. I thought for the longest time that I wouldn't be able to do what I normally do because of that, but it turns out I was wrong. Let me get there in a second. So first, let's start taking this lock apart, because taking this lock apart is not quite the same as a regular lock, because notice just by pulling that, I get this that comes out. And this would normally just be our core, but notice there's actually an inner and an outer part here. Inner and outer housing. So this is actually where our action is happening. What you have, you can kind of see down inside there, are these levers here. These are what's, not even levers, sliders. Those are what's being lifted by the key, and they allow a sidebar, much like you'd have in a disc detainer, but a sidebar to fall in. So the first thing that I want to mention that I was interested to learn about is if you don't have the key that these go to, it seems like disassembly might be impossible. I mean, you can take off the clip in the back, and there's actually an additional spacer here to make things fit. But notice, things are still locked together. So if you didn't actually have the key, one of the things I found is that you can still kind of, yeah, see, it's not even gonna slide that way. You can still kind of work this out by fitting some sort of tensioner in there. And then since you can see the levers, you can actually move these manually, one at a time. Keep saying levers, they're sliders. And this is actually what I had to do with these when I first got them, because when I first got this, it was not actually set to the key. But yeah, you can see, there's a better view. You can see that the sliders are right there. And so I would just move them up a little bit. Actually, if I remember correctly, that's right. If you move them up enough, even if you're not going to turn, it allows them, if they are out of these windows, top and bottom. That's what I did. See, it's been too long. I forgot about it. But if you push those out of the way, even if you don't have the correct key, you can start to push through. Now, it is going to drop back sometimes. See right there, I've caught, so you're gonna have to use your pick again. Now be careful, notice as we're coming out here, right up here, this is our sidebar. We don't want to lose track of that. Now this is actually easier than it would normally be because of the second thing that I wanted to say. And this is where my typical way of working comes into play. Where's my tweezers? All right, I'm going to take off the sidebar so I don't mess that up. What I mean by that is that typically I like to progressively pin things. You guys have probably seen me way back when I talked about an American 1100 and progressively pinning it. And I've even used that to get through, I think that's how I first got into my Avis 7240. There was my Federal 90A Pro, my Packlock 90A Pro, and I like progressive pinning for learning these harder locks. And I'd been messing with one of these for several years and not getting anywhere. But somebody, I think it was in one of Lady Lock's lives, said, yeah, you can go ahead and progressive pin these. Now watch out, because these do have ball bearings in the sides here. And actually I've lost one of them already. But this whole panel right here, you can see in the back, it's kind of spring loaded, but it's a wise idea to turn this over, because this is where, not gonna focus, but this is where our sliders live. So this is the part right here. These are the sliders that are actually worked by the key. Let's set this down. These are what's worked by the key, but they have this little nubbin that sticks out, and that nubbin, and those are actually very firmly in there. Those aren't going anywhere unless you disassemble further. But on this side, you have the little sliders, and I've actually stuck the rest of them over here. And right now I only have 2 sliders in here. And the idea is that when they are moved to the right place, I believe they line up with that gap right there. So I only have 2 in here right now, which has taught me an important lesson about this lock. I found out that this lock actually kind of catches before it turns, so I kind of have to pulse on my attention. Now, when you go to put this back, really important, because I kept being an idiot and trying to flip this over, but trying to go fast enough not to lose things. Don't do that. Just take this part right here and don't mess up the spring like I'm doing. I also tried to preset those inside. What I realized I need to do is, well, crap, I still managed to drop a slider. Bum, ba-dum, ba-bum. There we go. Is instead of trying to preset those inside, we just use the way this mechanism works. And what I mean by that is, remember how I showed you how you can change the key, right? Well, that happens by sliding this carriage backwards right here. You can see that those no longer line up. There's a gap at the front. So at this point, I take the key that I want, I stick that in, and so when this slides back, it is now reset to this key. Now it's almost ready to reassemble, but first I need to put my sidebar back in. Come on. Only goes in one way. You'd think I haven't done this before the way that's going. And then once that's in, and you'll see actually that there's grooves for the sidebar in here, because there's that neutral position. I like to stick it in this way just to be sure that things are moving around. While I keep the key in, go ahead and put that spacer on, and put this clip back on. There we go. And if everything's working right, you are good to go. Now you could probably pick it like this, but for the sake of comfort, I like to drop that back inside here. Pop this back in place. There we go. And so now, instead of having the full 5 sliders in here, this only has 2 sliders, which hopefully means that I can demonstrate at least getting that far. Yeah, I like the progressive pinning because it helps me kind of get the feel for things. At first, I feel like I'm just kind of button mashing, if you will, just kind of jamming around in there. I'm gonna move this so I don't knock it and make a mess out of my stuff. But it helps me figure out what tensioner works best, what kind of tension it takes. But yeah, that's where I am. That's what I've been learning about the Kwikset Smartkey, because I'm hoping I can get this, I'm going to say before summer ends, because I believe that getting this picked should put me at purple belt. Stu also wanted us to talk about what's next for me, beyond just completing this and completing purple belt. I am hoping to share some progress with disc detainer soon. I have been starting to play with those Cheeto picks that I got from Lockchuck, and I hope to have some information about those coming to you soon. And hopefully that can include me successfully picking a disc detainer. This just isn't working for me today. The last part that Stu wanted was for us to shout out a teacher, which means a lot for me to come up with, because if you've followed me for a while, you know I am a teacher myself. I teach high school math. I'm actually going to go with 2. I'm going to go with W3OY Ray for picking, because he's taught me a lot about how to progressively pin, encourage me to get through things like that. I've said it over and over, but I'm going to keep saying it because he's such a good guy and done so much for that. Additionally, we're going to go off YouTube, and I'm going to throw back to my childhood. I had a freshman science teacher by the name of Mr. Ruggles, and Mr. Ruggles was just an all-around great guy, and I like to think that I am in some way keeping his legacy as a teacher alive as I continue, as I'm a teacher. He was always kind of a goofy guy, just trying to connect with the kids, have a good time, and encourage them just to try things and be themselves. And that's what I always want to do more than anything else as a teacher. I want kids to be comfortable, to have a good time, and if I'm lucky, have them learn something too. All right. Apparently, I'm not learning anything with this lock right now, so we're going to hold that off for later, but there we go. Stu, 36K, that is his journey of learning entry. I'm looking forward to what everyone else is learning and working on, and with that, I'll talk to you all later.